Kathy Graham. If you just heard everything she said, you realize you don't want to criticize or contradict her at any level because well, maybe it's Michael, maybe it's Michael Lenahan, maybe that's no, wait a minute, maybe it's Carol Louis, maybe it's you. Wait a minute, just a second, let me feel the ass. Hey, pal, they're asking me how I'm supposed to describe you. Oh, okay, thanks. She said I should say that there is nothing that is not God. Everything that is a manifestation of the divine. So how would I describe God? I would describe God by saying that there is nothing that is not God.
What a beautiful answer.
I hate to be so simplistic, but God is the simplest thing of all.
You know, don't you wish everyone knew that? All 8 billion plus people on the planet knew that in their heart of hearts?
Yes, I do wish that, I do have that wish, and I think that all kidding aside, people like you and Michael and Kathy and Patricia and the others who are here can serve to move that idea forward.
That's why we're here.
And so, we have an opportunity because once we reach critical mass in the number of people who embrace a particular notion, the first domino falls. And when the first domino falls, the rest will follow. And you know what critical mass is? Some people think, oh, that's one more than half, 51% or whatever. Sociologists tell us that critical mass is somewhere between 5 and 7% of the whole number. So if we can get between 5 and 7% of humanity to embrace a particular idea about who we are and who God is and what is the purpose of life and all the kinds of things we're talking about here on this program, we can truly change the world's experience of itself. And that can happen in a relatively short period of time.
Yeah, 5 to 7%. Let's make that so. And you know, you're what you said about how you describe God reminds me of that statement that you made when you said, you've got me all wrong. God said to you, you've got me all wrong. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yes, well, I was on a national television program, actually. I was on the Today Show, and Matt Lauer, who's a national broadcaster, is talking to me on NBC on the Today Show, and he says, interviewing the man who claims that he talks to God, he was a little bit sardonic. He wasn't disrespectful, but just a little bit of sardonic when he was interviewing me. And he said, well, okay, folks, we've got the guy who says he's talking to God. Neale, if you really think you're talking to God, what's God's most important message to the world? And then he says to me in the very next sentence, oh, by the way, Neale, we have only about 30 seconds left for the interview. We have to break for a commercial here. So if you could put it into, 1 or 2 quick paragraphs, that would really be a help. And I thought to myself, you son of a gun. You would ask me the largest question that humanity has ever faced and tell me I've got 30 seconds to give you the answer. I mean, even Kathy Graham can't do it in 30 seconds. We just discovered that. So, how am I going to? And then I went inside. I really went inside. This is all joking aside. I went into my head and I thought, okay, God, we're on international television. This program is being telecast around the world. The Today Show. What's your message to the world? And I looked at Matt Lauer and I said, Matt, I don't need 30 seconds. I can give you God's message to the world in 5 words. And Matt Lauer looked at the camera and he said, "Okay, folks, from Neale to Walsh, God's message to the world in 5 words." Really, really putting me to the test. What was I going to say? And I looked right into the camera and I said, "Here's God's message to the world in 5 words. You've got me all wrong."
I love that. And,
And
that's a big message in this day and time, isn't it?
to put it mildly.
Yeah.
And Matt didn't know where to go with that. He actually extended the interview beyond the time they had allocated. He said, what am I supposed to do with that? What do you mean we've got God all wrong? I said, "Matt, if everything we think we know about God is right, the discussion's over. End the interview. Go to your commercial. But if we think that we may have gotten God all wrong, the discussion has just begun."
Exactly.
And God invites us to explore the possibility that there's something we don't fully understand here about God, about life, and about ourselves, the understanding of which would change everything.
Next question. I know people are curious to know because I hear so many people doubting themselves, and that is the ways that God talks to you, speaks to you.
Gosh, in 100 different ways across 1,000 moments in every year of my life, really every day of my life. Thoughts, words, actual words that come to you, feelings, even fragrances. Let me give you an example of why I said that. I was in a department store a few years ago, and I was looking for some menswear. I was looking for a men's sport coat. So I'm in the menswear department of this store, and I'm smelling gardenia. So I said to the man who's showing me some clothes, I said, "Is the store's perfume counter nearby? Because I'm smelling gardenia." He said, "No, the perfume is on the lower level, 1 floor beneath us." I said, "Really?" I wondered, did somebody just walk by wearing? No. So I'm trying to figure out. I couldn't put it together. Anyway, I got home a little bit later, and then I remembered. Wait a minute. Gardenia was my mother's signature fragrance. So I picked up the phone and decided to call my mother, who I hadn't spoken to in a few weeks. I wasn't calling my mom every other day. I was a grown man. So I picked up the phone and I called my mom. And I said, "Mom, I was just had the urge to call you. I was smelling your perfume as if you were in the room with me." She said, "I'm so glad you called, sweetheart." And we had a wonderful conversation. I don't need to get into the substance of it, but it was one of the most important conversations I ever had with my mother.
That's
Carol,
wonderful. We don't pay
Carol,
enough
wait a minute.
attention.
Carol, wait a minute. The punchline is coming.
Oh, okay.
2 days later, she left us.
Mm.
I never would have had that conversation with her if I had smelled gardenia in the men's department of a department store.
Oh, I love your story.
So how does God communicate with us? Thoughts, feelings, the chance utterance of a friend that you just happen to run into on the sidewalk, the overheard conversation in a coffee shop, the lyrics of the next song you hear on the radio, or the
Bumper
words,
stickers.
or the words out of Kathy Graham's mouth. How does God communicate with us? In 1,000 different ways across 100 moments every day of your life. Stay awake. Stay awake.
Do you sometimes feel like we're in this chaotic world, we're too distracted that we don't hear or sense or just, smell that message?
I'm sorry, I got too distracted just then. I couldn't understand what you were saying.
You are so funny. Love it. Love it. Now, tell us, you talk about inspired writing, and you describe it, the difference between inspired writing and automatic writing.
Oh, yes, huge difference, of course.
Yeah, explain that to our audience.
Well, people think of automatic writing as, a person picks up a pen and then their hand is made to move across the paper. And, the words are coming from ostensibly some other source, some source outside of them that's moving the pen. They call it automatic writing. And people had thought, some people had thought that that's what I was doing when I produced the Conversations with God dialogues. Oh, and by the way, let me include in my remarks here, I did not produce those dialogues in an attempt to write a book. I never imagined in a million years that anyone else would ever see what I was writing on the yellow legal pad. I didn't intend to write a book. I was told by God, Neale, you will one day turn this into a book and it will be accessed by many people. And I thought that's not going to happen, of course. No publisher, I mean, no legitimate publishing house. I could self-publish it, I suppose, but no legitimate publishing house is going to put out a book because some guy in Oregon says he's talking to God. That's not going to happen. So on a dare, Carol, on a dare, I sent my notes, literally Xerox, my handwritten notes, and just sent them to a publisher on a dare. A week later, the phone rings and he says, Neale, we want to put your book out. I said, are you kidding me? What? He said, no, it's a great work of fiction. People, about the guy who claims to be talking to God and God answers him. I said, whoa, 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 this is not a work of fiction. You can't publish it as a fiction book. And he said to me, are you telling me you think this actually happened to you? I said, of course it did. And if you don't want to publish it as a non-fiction book, then you don't get to put it out. He said, no, 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 we really think it's interesting stuff. We're gonna put the book out, but as a nonfiction book, you're not going to find 500 readers because people are not going to believe that a guy actually is talking to God. Come on, but we'll put it out. Just 500 readers is better than none. And he was right. It didn't find 500 readers. It found 5 million.
Wow.
In 37 languages. Now the number is 15 million.
Wow.
Because the book has been out for several years. I'm not bragging. I'm just saying that when you hear from that source, you'd better listen carefully.
I know the feeling. I know the feeling well. I love how you included some stories from your readers and people that you know. I was particularly touched by the one by Dr. Julie Cruels. Am I pronouncing her name correctly?
I haven't the foggiest notion. I don't know the lady.
She's the one who, she had a God, you called it a God moment. She's the one whose father communicated to her through a cardinal. I related to that because that also happened to me.
Yes. Well, I'm not surprised, but actually a cardinal?
A cardinal, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So I guess that's what you'd call the cardinal rule.
Oh, I should have seen that one coming.
But
Oh,
really, these are the kinds of ways that God communicates with all of us. Well, I should explain to the audience if they don't know what Carol is talking about is a book called God Talk, in which I list the many ways in which God speaks to us. And I offer a 6-step process by which we might all come closer to having our own conversation with God.
and that was my next question, is to share those 6 steps. Your
Oh
tool.
gosh, okay. Well, I'd be very happy to.
I've got the book right here, so I
I'm
can help
feeling a
you
little
out. I
self-conscious.
can
I'm
cue you.
I'm feeling a little self-conscious because I don't want people to think I've come here, to try to sell another 25.
Oh no, this is so fabulous. So tool number 1, possibility.
Okay, I'll give you the 6 steps.
Okay.
Tool number 1 is possibility. That is, we have to admit to ourselves, if nothing else, that number 1, it's possible that a creature called God exists, that God is not a figment of our imagination. And we also have to acknowledge the possibility that not only is there a God, but that God is talking to all of us all the time. Not just to, the Pope or the Archbishop of Canterbury or the Chief Ulama, but in fact to every human being, to all of us. And unless we're willing to accept that as a possibility, then we're not going to be able to, of course, have our own conversation with God. Step number 2 is worthiness. Big step. We have to, here we go again. Who am I for, even if God does talk to human beings? Okay, so maybe God did talk to the Pope. Maybe God did talk to Moses, for that matter, or many other human beings, but he wouldn't talk to little old me sitting there in Oregon. I don't think so. So step number 2 is, unless I accept that I am worthy to be spoken to by the divine, I'm not going to be able to have that experience. So I must accept my own worthiness. You know what God said to me, by the way, about worthiness? She said, "Oh, sweetheart, Neale, if you saw you the way God sees you, you would smile a lot." And it just melted my heart.
Yeah, it's humbling and empowering at the same time, isn't it?
Yeah. Step number 3, willingness. We have to be willing to open ourselves to a conversation with God. And that's not a small thing, because, Carol, most of the world's religions teach us, not all the world's religions, but the largest number of the world's religions teach us that if we claim God is talking directly to us, we're committing sacrilege.
Yes.
And so it's one of the biggest sins we could commit.
We've got to change that, don't we?
And there's a huge cultural bias as well. Forget about religion. There's simply a cultural bias against the idea that God is going to talk directly to us and through us to the world. So we have to be willing to set aside all of those biases, all of those cultural stories. So the 3rd step is willingness. The 4th step is wakefulness. Once we are worthy and willing, we must be wakeful. We must be awake. We must be, as I said earlier, listen to the next song you happen to hear on the radio. Listen to what the world is telling you by every device imaginable. So stay awake. Don't fall asleep at the wheel, but watch what you're hearing and watch what you're receiving in 1,000 different ways. The words on a billboard as you're driving around the highway and you happen to turn a corner and there are 12 words on a billboard, big as life, that just happen to answer a question you've been asking in your mind for the past 2.5 weeks. And there it is on the billboard right in front of you. Then step number 5 is acceptance. Not to reject what we are hearing, but to accept it, not to say, "Oh, it's just my imagination." Yeah. Which is, by the way, what I said at first when I was having my conversations with God. I said to God, "How do I know this is not just my imagination?" You know what she said? He said, "Neale, what makes you think I would stop at using your imagination?" Of course I would use your imagination. Where do you think Mozart's music came from? Where do you think Michelangelo's art came from? Where do you think any great creation comes from? Of course, it could very well be your imagination. That doesn't mean it's not worthy to be received. Use your imagination. Yes. So I have re-embraced step number 5, to accept, to understand, and not to write off or dismiss the messages that I'm receiving from the universe, if you please. Which
Will
takes
you
us.
Say that again?
Sure, that again.
You are too funny. You know what I mean.
Oh, I thought you wanted me to say that again. Okay. I'm doing my best to follow the conversation.
We don't just accept and say that, say what you said before, to be clear.
I forgot what I said before. I was on a roll. But
Okay.
we don't just accept it, we embrace it, and we don't reject
Embrace.
it.
Yeah.
And we don't reject it, thinking that it's just my imagination. We embrace it and we move into it and we live into it.
Awesome.
And we see if there's truth for us in the message we're receiving, which takes us to step number 6, the final step, discernment.
Yes.
Everything that happens in our life, every word that we hear, is not necessarily a conversation with God. You know, you're reaching into your pocket on your way to your car in the parking lot to get your car keys. And as you pull the car keys out of your pocket, a $10 bill happens to fall on the ground from your pocket. Oh, it's a sign. God wants me to take all of my money and throw it on the ground. No, 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 no. Discernment, discernment.
Yeah.
Decide which really is a communication, if you please, from the divine. God's words to me are always filled with joy, freedom, and fearlessness.
Mm.
If there's any fear involved, it's not a conversation with God. In my opinion, I could of course be wrong about all of this. So the 6 steps in summary: possibility, worthiness, willingness, wakefulness, acceptance, and discernment. Once we embrace those 6 steps, we can move closer to having our own interaction with the divine.
I
Let's
love
just,
how you break it down so simply. You know, we need more of that. And actually for me, the messages I receive from God have a simplicity to them.
yes, that's been my experience as well.
Yeah.
Simple, pure, and direct. Filled with joy, fearlessness, and love, and freedom.
Wonderful. I love a quote that you have in the book, the God Talk book. Life informs life through the process of life itself.
Yes.
Oh, that's
Life informs life about life through the process of life itself. So stay awake. Stay awake. When you just happen to run into a friend you haven't seen in 7 years on the sidewalk downtown, my God, I haven't seen you in forever. And that person brings you a piece of information that's seemingly random. Pay attention. And by the way, as you're walking back to your car in the parking lot, when you see a man leaning up against a building on the ground, sitting there on the sidewalk with a little basket in front of him with a cardboard sign that says anything helps, don't think for a minute that that man is there by coincidence. Reach into your purse, into your handbag, or into your pocket and pull out the biggest bill you can find and put it in that man's basket. Not because he needs it, but because you need the opportunity to demonstrate once again the grandest thought you ever held about who you really are. That's why you're here. You came here to serve the agenda of your soul, which is to announce and declare, express and fulfill, demonstrate and experience who you really are. An individuation of divinity. I could,
I
of
love
course, I could, of course, be wrong about all of this, but I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I'm with you on this. And another quote that I love in your book, this is probably one of my favorites. We are each divine. Life is now inviting us to demonstrate divinity. We are each aspects of God, and life is asking us to make that understanding practical and functional in our daily experience. That is eloquent.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. And that eloquence comes directly from the divine. And there is, of course, um, a huge aspect of the divine that resides in all of us. And that's true of every sentient being in the cosmos. So it's not about calling God down from up on high. It's about calling God forth. Call it forth from within you.
Yes.
Oh, and by the way, the best way to find the divinity within you, in case you are wondering how to do that, the best way to see and to find and to experience the divinity within you is to see and find the divinity in everyone whose life you touch. What you fail to see across the room, you cannot find in yourself. So give each human being with whom you have contact the opportunity to demonstrate who they are with you and see their divinity. Call it forth. Invite it. Oh, and by the way, one last thought. See it even when it doesn't look like it.
Yes.
Because there have been times when you have acted in a way that doesn't look like you are divine as well. That's never happened, of course, in my life. I've been perfect from the age of 7 and haven't made a mistake in a very long time. See, even Kathy didn't even smile at that. She's listening to me. She's going, I think he's serious. But in fact, I made some mistakes just yesterday. So if I can forgive myself for the mistakes I've made, am I willing to forgive the other person for the mistakes they've made or the mistakes they're making right now here in front of me? Oh, and by the way, one last thought. Forget about forgiveness. All joking aside, forget it. Forget everything I've just said about forgiveness. Never forgive anyone anything, any more than God forgives us for anything, any more than you would forgive a 2-year-old child for spilling the milk. Understanding replaces forgiveness in the mind of the master. When we understand how a person, including ourselves, could act or say the things that they've done or said, then we understand that compassion replaces forgiveness. God doesn't forgive us for anything because we can't be in a position to hurt God in any way. God can't be hurt, damaged, upset, angered, frustrated by little old us. I mean, really? You really think that the highest power in the universe can be hurt or damaged? That God goes, I can't believe what Neale just said. I'm sending him to hell. I mean, really? Really? Yeah, I want to share with you one little story, if I may. True story, all joking again. No joking, all joking aside. Carol, when I was 9 years old, I went to a Catholic school, and the priest came into our classroom once a week to teach catechism. Okay, fair enough. And one week he was teaching about mortal sin versus venial sin, major sins in the religion. I said, I raised my little 9-year-old hand. This is a true story. Father, can you give me an example of a mortal sin? And I'm sure he's going to tell me, yeah, well, murdering somebody or stealing someone's life savings or, whatever. He says, yeah, uh, if you miss Mass on Sunday without a good excuse, it's a mortal sin. And my mind at 9 years old is trying to embrace this. Wait a minute. If I miss church on Sunday, 1 week of my life, I'm going to hell? And I thought, can I embrace a religion that teaches me that fear is the reason I need to go to church? No, I want to go to church because I love God, not because I'm afraid if I don't go, I'm going to go to hell. I mean, come on. But I'm not making this up to this day because I checked it out recently. The church still teaches that if you miss Mass without a good excuse, if you're caring for a sick parent, okay, fair enough. or if you have to work to support your family, okay. But if you decide to just, one Sunday, an old friend that you haven't seen in 20 years visits you and you're going to go play golf, which is your only chance to spend some time with your old friend. And you decide, okay, I'll miss mass this week. God says, sorry to have to tell you this, but you're going to hell. Unless you confess your sin in a confessional. And then we have to go to confession on Saturday and tell the priest, I'm sorry, I missed mass on Sunday. Do you think God will forgive me? What kind of a religion teaches that we need to fear God? Just about every religion in the world. That's
Yeah,
very
maybe.
sad. That's very sad.
Yeah. Now, I know in your books you talk about reincarnation, and this is the Reincarnation Book Club. And to me, everything that you're saying follows along with the cosmology of reincarnation. But can you speak a little bit to your thoughts about reincarnation?
Well, not my thoughts, but what God has
Or
told
God's
me,
thoughts, yeah. Well,
what,
you
what
are God, you know.
what God had said to me in my conversation is that, of course, we live more than one lifetime. Of course. In fact, God told me I've lived more than, I know this is going to sound outlandish, but across the span of eternity, that I've lived actually over 600 lifetimes.
Wow.
And uh, many of us have lived hundreds and hundreds of lifetimes, surely more than one lifetime, because when we cross over to the other side, as it's popularly called, to the realm of the spiritual, the soul decides, you know what? I want to return to the realm of the physical because it's in that realm where exists a contextual field that allows me to demonstrate and to experience my true identity as an individual expression of God. And I ask God, well, why can't I just do that in the realm of the spiritual? Why can't I do it in heaven? Why do I have to come back to this place? And God said, well, you don't have to go back, but you're going to want to go back. You're going to volunteer to go back. And the reason you don't do it when you're in what you call heaven is precisely because it is heaven. That is, nothing else there exists that is not blissful and paradise. And in the absence of what you are not, in the absence of what you are, I should say, in the absence of what you are and what you are not, you can't be who you are. I said, God, you're confusing me. What are you trying to say? And God said to me, Neale, when you're in heaven, you're like a candle in the sun. You're there all right with the 50 cajillion other candles. But if you want to express yourself, to experience yourself as a candle, as the light, Neale is the light, Kathy is the light, Carol is the light, even Michael is the light. If you want to know yourself as the light, you need to place yourself in what? Oh, I see. In the darkness. Then when you're in the darkness, you can know yourself as the light. Therefore, when you find yourself surrounded by the darkness, judge not and neither condemn, but be a light unto the darkness, that you might know who you really are, and that all those whose lives you touch might know who they really are as well. And that's why we reincarnate, that we might know ourselves in our own experience, because God created the realm of the physical as one of three realms in the kingdom of God: the realm of the spiritual, the realm of the physical, and the realm of pure being. And we will voluntarily choose to reincarnate because this space in which we now find ourselves provides us with an opportunity to know who we really are through the expression and the experience of it. Of course, I could have all that wrong. I think so.
It's a good point. It's up to each and every one of us to discern that for ourselves, whether it feels like truth or not, isn't it?
For sure. There's no such thing as absolute truth. And that's also what God said to me. I said, well, God, you're confusing me. Why are you saying these things to me? She said, Neale, relax. Just listen to me. There's no such thing as absolute truth. What your own species thought was true 600 years ago, you have denied this day. So truth is, Hemingway put it perfectly, a movable feast.
Oh, I love
Therefore,
it.
don't cling to what you think is the truth. Allow yourself to experience what's true for you right here, right now. And then create your own truth through the living of your life.
Very nice. And I want to open up the floor to anyone who has any questions. If you'll
People are
raise
going to fall
your
through if you open up the floor.
hand. You're too funny. The metaphorical floor.
Oh, okay.
And I know there's some people on here who ask really good questions, so do not be afraid, guys and gals. Raise your hand and ask a question.
But if you ask the wrong question, you're going to hell.
Oh, that's funny. Okay.
Who was that, Lawrence?
Yeah, I'd like to say,
Hold
can
on
you
a
hear
second,
me?
I'm going to pin you. Where are you?
There I am.
Yeah, okay, hold on a second. I'm going to pin you and you guys can chat.
Great. Well, Neale, I was really looking forward to seeing you again. You and I knew each other in the 80s in Ashland. And when you were just starting your your wonderful life work, and you visited us at the Alcyon Light Center on the Oregon-California border. I've been wanting to reach you many times over to reconnect with you because I feel I am living, in a sense, two lives at the same time. And I would like to experience myself with you and reconnecting. I've often thought that we live on thin ice, that there is always another of the physical reality that we apprehend as secure, when indeed it's all in liminal space, in a sense. And I was love to know from you how you live your life now, as opposed to it was when I knew you 45 years ago. And I remember you had a call-in radio show where you raised hell with people. You were very, very popular because you were so damned outrageous. And I thought, wow, what a transformation this man has taken. He's now on God's top, intimate list as a co-creator. And
Well, let me clarify something. We are all on God's list as co-creators. We are all messengers of the divine. I'm no more special than anyone else. That doesn't mean that I'm not special. I think I'm very special, but so is everyone else. So I want to eliminate from anyone's mind who's watching this program right now,
yeah,
the idea that I think that I'm somehow special. I'm going to reject that. I'm not more special than anyone else, and I'm not any higher on God's list than anyone else is. But yes, yeah, I used to be a radio talk show host in Southern
right,
Oregon, and I was on the air, 5 hours a day, every day of the week, or 6 days a week.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was known as Bob White on the radio.
Yeah, I remembered your name was White. I didn't remember the first name.
Yeah,
That was
Bob
very
White.
funny.
Yeah, that was
Bob White.
my AFTRA name, AFTRA, the American Federation of Television and Radio Artists. We all had to have if you belong to the Performers Union. And so I
Yeah,
had the name, I used the air name Bob White.
Yeah.
And I was on the radio for 27 years in my life, I mean.
Yeah, and I remember being interviewed on one of your programs. It was about rammed earth construction that I had done at our center. And I remember you were very interested in, exploring that. We had some people calling in, and it was quite an interesting interface.
But my life changed when I had my conversations with God. And I began the biggest change I made in my life, to answer your question, is I stopped having the experience of need. I exchanged my needs for preferences. I have many preferences, but nothing anymore that I need. I don't need another person's presence. I don't need a certain income in my life. I don't need, frankly, anything anymore. And when I released the idea that I need something in order to be happy, my life became happier than it has ever been before. So that and the most important message I got from God around that was, Neale, I'm gonna give you 3 words that will change your life. Be the source.
Be the source.
Yeah. And I said, of what? And God said, of anything you need, whatever you think that you need, whatever you imagine that you need, because it's all in your imagination. Whatever you desire in your life, be the source of what you desire in your life, in the life of everyone else whose life you touch. If you want more money in your life, be the source of more money in someone else's life. If you want more humor in your life, be the source of more humor in someone else's life. If you want more companionship and love in your life, be the source of more companionship and love in someone else's life. Whatever you want more of, cause another to have more of it, because what flows through you sticks to you. Or, as a friend of mine said a few thousand years ago, do unto others as you would have it done unto you. It's really quite simple.
Yeah.
Thanks for the question, Lawrence.
Yeah. Great to see you again.
Thank you, Lawrence. And I hope that your construction company failed miserably.
Wicked sense of humor. Does anyone else have a question?
Nobody else dares to have a question.
Are you still living in Ashland area?
Oh, sure. Oh, sure.
Are you?
Absolutely. Yeah, I live in a lovely little bungalow. I had this really huge big house, but I didn't need it. After a while, you realize I've got 5 rooms here that I haven't stepped into in a year. So we sold the big place and got a little bungalow on the south side of town. But I love Ashland. I wouldn't leave Ashland for anything. It's a wonderful place. Wonderful place.
Well, I moved here to Richmond, Virginia in January. I got instructions from upstairs that it was time for me to move here. And I haven't looked back, and it's been wonderful. I wonder if you'd like to visit sometime.
Well, I don't do much traveling anymore, but if I do, I'll see if I can I've been to Richmond several times. But if I start traveling again in the future, I'll put Richmond on my list.
Great. We'd love to have you.
Thanks, Lawrence. Martha has a question. Let me find you, Martha, and pin you. She's always got great questions. Oh, hold on.
No pressure, Martha.
She knows my pressure.
Thanks. Yes, it's good.
Okay. This is Martha Mullen.
Hi, Neale. We used to pass your conversations with God around in the mental health crisis second shift room in Dayton, Ohio, because we would be up all night responding to psychiatric crisis calls, and it was very soothing. I just wanted to tell you that.
Thank you for sharing
And
that with me. It makes me feel good. Thank you. How can I
really
serve
true.
you?
It's a very good book. So, any suggestions about how to? So some other selves voted one way, and some other selves voted the other way, and it's all one way anyway. It's unity, but we have elected to see things in polarity, and I just wondered if you had any comments on that or observation.
Well, I think that we need to embrace our unity. I think we have to come to a conclusion that differences do not have to create divisions, that opposites do not mean opposition, and that we do not necessarily, that contrasts do not create conflicts. So that we simply have to decide that we can disagree agreeably.
Mhm.
And the fastest way to spread that message, my dear, is to simply be an example of it.
Yeah.
So whenever I'm talking to people about, whether it's local politics or, whatever it might be,
Sure.
who's going to win the World Series, whatever it might be, I make sure that if I disagree with another person, that I disagree agreeably,
Mhm.
so that we can really experience that differences do not have to create divisions.
Mhm.
And by the way, differences are holy. It's holy ground, because differences allow us to experience our individuality.
Mhm.
Or as the French would say, vive la différence.
Very true.
Vive la différence. Yeah.
Thank you, Neale.
Thank you, Martha.
Sure.
Anyone?
Looks like Tom. Tom.
Okay. Tom, let me find you and pin you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, hold on one sec. Okay, there you go.
Well, I don't really have a question, but since Lawrence opened the door with reminiscences, thought I would follow up. Neale, my name's Tom Coates. I first met you in Richmond in 1996 or 7 at a talk for about 4 or 5 people that you gave at Unity Church, Unity of Richmond. And the last time I saw you to speak with you was something I remember even more vividly, which was, I think it was the weekend of September 28th through 30th, 2001 at Omega Institute, just 2.5 weeks after 9/11. And it was one of the most, I think for you and everyone else there, one of the most emotionally grounded meetings that I've ever been to, because of the impact of 9/11 and so forth. And so I drove up there for that weekend, not knowing whether you were going to actually be there or not, given the events that had just preceded it, and was very, very grateful and that you did come, and the fact that 9/11 had just taken place just added more to the impact. Yeah, again for that. And thank you for still being here with us now. So,
Okay, here's Michael, and I hope I'm pronouncing your last name correctly, Kuhn.
Yeah, I've heard it many ways, but that's probably the most appropriate way that my parents used to call it. Thank you for putting this program on tonight. It's very enlightening. Neale, I have a quick question that I've been struggling with recently, and maybe you can shed some more light into this particular issue. I was raised Roman Catholic. I used to be an altar boy, so I grew up with guilt and shaming and purgatory and hell. So none of these words that you used earlier are foreign to me. When we say the kingdom of heaven is within, in your opinion and what you've perceived in your conversations with God, is the God source or the divine within or without or both? If you could please elaborate on that particular issue, because I'm trying to capture that a bit better. Thank you.
Well, Michael, my understanding is that the energetic that we call God, that I sometimes refer to as the essential essence, or, the foundational energy, does exist presently inside of, interior to, as a part of every sentient being in the cosmos. So that's been my understanding, that we are, in fact, living, breathing expressions of the divine. The question is not whether God lives within each of us. The question is whether we, A, know it, B, accept it, and C, choose to demonstrate it, to live into it. You know what I think we need to do, Michael? I think we need to have a new definition of God. I think we need to redefine God, which is what I've done in a book that I've written called The God Solution. Boy, guys, if you haven't read The God Solution, you want to read it. I'll send you a copy. I'll send you, I will send you my author's manuscript, a
Wow.
digital copy at no cost. All you have to do is send me an email saying, Neale, I want to receive a copy of The God Solution, and I will send it to you by return email without any cost whatsoever. It's going to be a digital copy of the author's manuscript. And the reason I want to bring it up, Michael, is because the God Solution suggests that the solution to humanity's challenges facing God, and as a former Catholic, you know all about that, is by redefining God. A two-word definition of God that I have been given in my conversations. Here's the new definition of God: pure love. Now, Michael, when I say that in front of an audience, somebody in the back of the room inevitably gets up and says, oh, Neale, we've been listening to you for 20 minutes for you to tell us that God is love, the big revelation from Neale Donald Walsh. We all know that God is love. Every religion on the planet teaches that much. And I have to say to my friend in the back of the room, wait a minute, I didn't say God is love. I said God is pure love. Pure love. Now my friend in the back of the room, Michael, will say, all right, what's the difference? The difference is that pure love needs, expects, requires, and demands nothing in return.
So unconditional love.
We can't even love the person on the pillow next to us that way. We love the person on the pillow next to us, but if we don't get what we think we're supposed to get in return, whatever it might be, we say to that person, okay, the deal's off. So we experience, when I say we, I mean the largest number of human beings, myself included, for the first 55 years of my life, we experience love as a trade deal. Like nations have trade deals with other nations. You give me this, I'll give you that. You give me this, I'll give you that. It's a trade deal. Quid pro quo, tit for tat. We can make it happen. Just all we have to do is agree on what I want to get out of it, and this is what I'll put into it to get out of it what I want to get out of it. But what if we decided to love each other the way God loves us, needing, requesting, even hoping for, much less requiring, nothing in return? That's pure love. And if we were to redefine God in that way, we would then redefine the way we are behaving, because we have been told that we are to behave with others as the way God behaves with us. Be God-like. So we've decided to be judgmental, condemning, and punishing with each other because we think that God is judgmental, condemning, and punishing with us. But when we decide that God is pure love, judgment, condemnation, and punishment are cleared off the slate. It's no longer part of our collective reality. with regard to how God behaves with us. And then we take it off the slate as well with regard to how we behave with others. No more judgment, condemnation, and punishment. But as a young boy, I was taught, as you were, Michael, about condemnation, judgment, and punishment. Let me tell you a little story, folks, of my childhood growing up as a Catholic. I was 18 years old. I was a young man. I wasn't a child anymore, but I was a young man. And I was invited to, I guess I was younger than that. I guess about 16. Okay, fair enough. I was 16, but I was invited to attend the wedding of my best friend who lived across the street. He was an older man and he was getting married. And he invited me to his wedding. And I was all excited about it. And I told the kids at school about it. I was in my last year of high school. And then I was telling some friends about it. And a friend of mine said, "You can't go. It's in a Lutheran church. He's getting married in a Lutheran church. Don't you realize it's a sin to go to any other church except a Catholic church? You can't go to a Lutheran church." And I thought, oh my God, this guy actually believes that. He actually believes that if you go to a Methodist church or a Lutheran church or a Baptist church, God forbid, a Jewish temple, a synagogue, God forbid, you're going to hell. It's a sin. Then you got to go to confession and confess it and say, "Bless me, Father, for I have sinned." My last confession was, let's see, 17 years ago. And I went to a Lutheran church last Sunday, and I went to a wedding of a friend of mine. Do you think God will forgive me? So, Michael, I understand what you went through in the early part of your life and what billions are going through even to this day. So here's the opportunity. Embrace the God solution and embrace the notion that God would never punish anyone for anything.
Well, thank you, and thank you for your kindness. And I just asked Carol to share your email address with me. I'm looking forward to the book, and thank you very much for sharing time with us tonight.
Well, you're kind to say that, Michael. And by the way, folks, my email address is so simple. You couldn't forget it if you tried. My email address is also pretty obvious. Neale@neildonaldwalsh.com. Really quite simple. Me, Neale@neildonaldwalsh.com. If you send me an email, I'll send you a digital copy of the God Solution.
Again, thank you very much.
It's another wonderful book. I was toying between focusing on that book or the God Talk book, and so I chose the God Talk book. But the God Solution is wonderful as well. You're an excellent writer.
Aren't you a nice person? Your check's in the mail.
And one last thing I want to ask you before we close up. I want to be respectful of your time. I'd love for you to just off the cuff tell us any words of wisdom that you would like to share.
When I asked God, what is the most important message you could give to me? She said, "Okay, Neale, write this down. Your life is not about you. Your life has nothing to do with you. Your life is about everyone whose life you touch and the way in which you touch. But when you understand that, Neale, you will see that the way you touch other people's lives does touch you. And in the universal sense, it does have to do with you for an elegant reason. Neale, there's only one of us in the room. There's only one of us in the room. We are all one.